I am Killer Cow. Death to pigs. That's an outside voice in the farm. Come out.
An outside voice on the farm?
Actually, when you say to practitioners, why do you do that? The answer is, I don't know. Or do you want to carry on doing that? And the answer is often, no.
Yeah, true.
Are you Nanny Plum's boyfriend? And I was like,
how did you know?
And play, just play all the time. And even when they get older, still play.
Hello! It's me!
And also me!
It's me, Matt.
And Julia. We never introduce ourselves like that anymore.
We just assume people know us, don't we?
That's very vain of us, isn't it?
It is very
If you've been
vain.
listening up until now, maybe you know our names.
Yeah.
It's not important.
Probably not. We're not the thing, are we?
We are not the celebrities. It's
Who
the
is the
guests.
thing this week? Who is the person?
The person this week is Alistair Bryce-Clegg. That's our guest.
He's going to be good. Every single time I talk to Alistair, I walk away just excited and ready to go and change the world.
Yeah. Very inspiring. So I'm very excited to hear what he has to say.
Yes, and what are we talking about?
We're talking about play. Somewhat controversial, maybe.
Big topic. It's always a big topic,
It's an enormous topic.
When was the last time you played?
Do you know what? I think I played quite a lot. I was playing with my sons yesterday. We were building a train track. I think, if anything, I could probably be a little bit less prescriptive in my play, because I can be a bit like, well, the track needs to look like this, otherwise the 10:15 is going to be late out of the station.
That's your
Thomas,
own need.
you're messing around again. And then Thomas, the tank engine, gets sent to the engine shed, and my son's like, well, I was playing with that. And I'm like, unfortunately,
Thomas gets in trouble.
we're sad to announce there's been a delay. So, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe you can learn something from Alistair, who has a little bit more of a free notion of what play should be.
I think he does, yeah. Hopefully he'll have some good advice.
Should we get underway?
I think we should.
Let's do it.
Matt, would you introduce our guest, please?
Absolutely. So, Dr. Alistair Bryce-Clegg, otherwise known as ABC. I mean, how convenient is that?
Perfect.
The man was built to work in early years. It makes
Nominative
sense.
determinism.
Yeah.
That's what it
Is an international early years consultant and trainer, as well as his PhD in education, hence the doctor, with a specialism in early years. He has 3 decades of experience in the sector. He's an author, he's a speaker, and if you haven't seen him live, you got to. Yeah. It's great. We've seen a few times Alistair live, and it's big Alice Sharp energy.
Ooh,
when Alistair,
yeah, love it.
That is the highest praise I can give Alistair. He's advised the government's Education Select Committee on early years, policy and practice, and even the Royal Foundation on early years and parenting. So, our first guest by royal appointment.
That's impressive, isn't it?
And he has even had a debut on TV in the Old People's Home for 4-year-olds, which is almost as cool as guesting on the Tiny Chair Pod. And not only our first royal appointment on the podcast, but our first BAFTA-winning guest on the Tiny Chair. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Wow.
The first record I could find of our chat with Alistair was us conversing in 2017, which feels like a long time ago.
Gosh.
And actually, if Mickle's really mean and can be bothered, he can flash up the pictures of 2018 me interviewing Alistair looking like an absolute child.
Baby Matt and baby Alistair.
Welcome to the pod, Alistair.
Welcome.
It is really good to be here. I can't believe 2017. I literally, that is a long time ago.
Yeah, it feels like a long. Yeah. That feels like a long time ago.
Yeah. I've seen the video. You look very young.
I do.
What happened?
Well, the passing of life. Yeah.
It's this podcast. It's aged us horribly.
Actually, I think we hired you in 2022. Maybe that was the.
I mean,
maybe that was it. Yeah.
Should we get going?
Yes, Alistair. Do you know what an ick is?
I do. I have 3 sons who are now 25, 24. That was careless and unnecessary. And 21. So I also have nieces and nephews who are all 15, 16-ish. So icks is big news in our family. Yeah.
Oh, you've got the skibbity toilet generation. Love that.
Don't even get me started on your skibbities.
I love that. In that case, then, I don't need to explain it. So you tell us, please, what your early years ick is.
I have many early years icks. My primary one, and if you've been on any of my training, you will know this because I bang on about it constantly, is flaming plastic ivy. Why?
Oh my
As an early years workforce, are we smothering ourselves and our environments in plastic ivy? I've got my lovely Hessian backboards.
It comes for free with the Hessian. I think that's what it is.
Well, there is some science and research around the Hessian bit, so there's some really good research around why we shouldn't have distracting backgrounds, which is kind of where the neutral Hessian thing comes from. But the ivy, I just don't get it. Somebody said to me the other day, the thing is, it's like bringing the outdoors in. Well, it isn't. It's plastic. Did you not just get rid of all of your plastic about 3 years ago and replace it with wood and wicker at great expense? And now you are filling your environment with landfill. And also, which 4-year-old ever came in and said, "Oh, I can't work in here, but now you've draped some plastic ivy around a Hessian backboard." Another setting I was in, they had a hula hoop hanging from their ceiling, which they'd wrapped in Hessian and then draped plastic ivy around, and it just hung there resplendent. And I was a bit like, "Oh, tell me about your hoop." And they're like, "It's just part of our aesthetic. It kind of brings the outdoors in." So I get the science and research that underpins the neutral environment in terms of a learning brain. What I don't get is how, if it isn't smothered in plastic ivy, like I even saw some trellis the other day that was just leant up against a wall, draped in plastic ivy, and that was it. Nothing on it, nothing in it, just trellis and ivy. So my biggest ick, although nobody's going to die as a result of it, is plastic ivy. It really does my head in.
I love the idea of this plastic ivy chandelier.
It's giving Pizza Hut buffet, the salad buffet from the mid 2000s, where they had all that like fake plants around it. Like,
it's just everywhere.
I also love your idea of a 4-year-old sort of saying, "I was put right off my phonics because the ivy was there was insufficient plastic green stuff around me." Yeah.
Did you know the Hessian was naked? No ivy to speak of.
We talked about icks. I don't think we could probably talk about plastic ivy for the rest of the pod, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we're also trying a new concept called early years picks. Very clever. So if you will, I read "if you will." That was part of the previous sentence, but I missed it. There you go. There you see behind the curtain. Anyway, something that you think, the idea of an early years pick is it's like something that you think should be in every setting. You get to airdrop a single thing into every early years setting around the country. It could be a resource, a person, a policy, a philosophy, anything.
Yep. Pick out all the ivy.
Yeah.
Put in something.
Exactly. You get to replace all the plastic ivy with something. What are you choosing?
So practically, I would have a deconstructed role play. That would be my go-to, and I'm going to expand that role play into a concept of a deconstructed small world space as well, because I think that is one of the areas that it can be the most powerful, most impactful for all early years children, regardless of what your previous experience is. Also, if you've got English as an additional language. What we tend to do in terms of role play spaces and small world spaces are put children into situations where they cannot access the provision. We'll say things like, "Well, it's spring, so let's have a garden centre, and we'll spend ages making a gorgeous garden centre with plastic gladiolis with price tags for like 4p each, and we'll have pot of seed and a till." And then we'll put children who have never been in a garden centre on their own without an adult, and expect them to do all of the things that we ideally want a role play space to do. So the idea of a deconstructed role play, which is something I've been banging on since about 2011, is that it's a very ambiguous, it underpins all the kind of main ethos around early years and play-based learning, that you've got ambiguous resources, so boxes, tubes, fabric, all that kind of stuff, so that any child who's in any space at any time can make it anything. And then you would add in some enhancements, so a bit of structure to help those children who don't have massive life experience. And then you would, as an adult, model that play. But I often sit and watch children in, say, small world farms that will play "I'm mummy cow, you're daddy cow, where's the baby cow?" which is not a farm play at all, it's just domestic role play. Or more likely they're playing "I am killer cow, death to pigs," and then you get, "That's an outside voice in the farm, come out."
An outside voice on the farm?
So then basically you're saying to children, "I'd like you to go into the post office at 4 years old, and I'd like you to role play working in a post office." When was the last time you were in a post office? Do you see children popping into the post office and saying, "Oh, I need a V5 document for my car. Have you got one?" So you tend to get post offices, Chinese restaurants, hairdressers, garden centres, places that children don't frequent and that need a lot of background information to allow access, that actually disable learning rather than enable it. So a practical resource would be that. I think a more kind of overarching idea would be some really good quality training for everybody that goes into early years on what play actually is and what it looks like in practice.
Oh, he's anticipating the questions.
He's anticipating the questions later. How perfect.
Another ick that isn't plastic ivy are Tuff Spots with activities in them. Often, partly I work with senior leaders who will say things like, "I need to see attainment," and therefore I ask all my staff to put an objective onto every activity they put out, which is, again, ridiculous because children just don't do it. But I also see loads of social media accounts which worryingly have like hundreds of thousands of followers. That is basically, and if I could swear I would, but I won't, rubbish. I was trying to...
You really struggled to not find the swear word.
Silliness.
Silliness, sugar in a Tuff Tray that's called learning. So can you match, can you count, can you sort? And the issue with that is that the children who can, and so they've learned nothing. The children who can't, still can't. And what they're not is play. So we talk about play-based learning, but actually it's not play-based learning at all because there's no element of play to it. So I think if practitioners could understand that better, and a lot of it is driven by social media and a lot of it is driven by poor practice and habit, then we would have more impactful environments that were based on authentic child development as opposed to a watered down national curriculum version of an activity in a tray called play.
You said so many things there. I want to
start. I was starting by thinking about how, if we were honest, post office role play now, like we don't have post offices anymore. We have like corner shops.
We don't really.
They'd need to have like
post
cans of
offices,
Monster
do
Energy
they?
and stuff in your post office.
Our local post office has now gone half vape shop, half post.
Exactly, yeah. That's the problem, is if you want to carry on the post office thing in early years, you're going to have a lot of vapes in the setting, and that's not ideal.
I mean,
And what do we got the post office for? I mean, we'll get stuck on this, but like when I was little, even when my boys were small, you would go to the post office to post things, letters, parcels. Now, if I've got a parcel, a man in a van comes and picks it up, or if I don't send letters, I send emails. Even we do a lot of like supermarket shop play with children. And again, that can be really valuable with an adult, but lots of children will have their shopping delivered by somebody in a van that unpacks it and leaves it on your step. So when we think about what those areas of provision are for, and that's usually my starting point in training, why would you have a role play area? What is it that we want children to learn through role play interactions? And we get a really good skills list going. And then you say, right, well, if we look at all of those skills of like verbal cue, non-verbal cue, social interaction, storytelling, resolution, all of the things that we'd have, then if I put this 3-year-old, 4-year-old in the post office where they've never ever been, or in a Chinese restaurant, am I enabling all of these skills to occur, or am I actually narrowing things so far down that they'll only give me domestic play or superhero weapon play, which is usually what happens.
I feel like we could get stuck there forever. We'll have to move on to the quick fire round.
Go on.
This is our section to learn a bit more about you, Alistair, and we want to start by saying, what was the last thing that made you really belly laugh so much that your stomach hurt?
So I found a clip of a ventriloquist called Nina Conti, who I do like, and she comes up on my Instagram quite a lot. And she's the one that puts the ventriloquist masks onto adults, and then she operates them. But she is so funny, and actually it just popped up on my Instagram feed, and I watched it, and it properly made me, to the point where I then went and looked and saw where she was on tour. Could I go and watch her live?
Amazing.
Nina Conti.
I also recently watched a TED Talk that you did some years ago, and you said that if you weren't in early years, you would be a Blue Peter presenter. Is that still the case, or do you have possibly another career option that you would have gone for if you weren't in early years now?
I desperately wanted to be on Blue Peter, and I wrote to Blue Peter when I was about 9, and I have the letter from a production assistant or producer called John Comerford, who wrote back to me and said, what a lovely letter, Alistair. If you carry on doing all the things you're doing, come back and see us when you're older. And it was a really nice,
yeah, of course,
but on proper Blue Peter paper. So yeah,
he lied to you.
He did lie to me, basically, but then that's what all adults do to children. So that was way before kind of teaching. There's a lot of Blue Peter about being a teacher, as you know, or being an educator. And what the joy of my job is now, that I'm kind of at the other end of it, is that I get asked to go and work with other agencies around writing stuff for children or writing stuff for
so cool.
television. So I don't think I'll ever be building Tracy Island out of a yogurt pot and some kind of soggy tissue, but I do have some involvement in some content that is
You're getting closer.
hopefully feeding the future generations, because there is a lot of crud out there in terms of children's media, and it's really good to try and fight the fight for some quality stuff.
I'd love to do that.
You would be good at that.
I thought potentially I would end up living on Sesame Street. So, I mean...
That would be nice,
If
wouldn't it?
if you're watching Sesame Street,
Shout out.
when they
Don't take
finally
her. I need
fire
her.
me from the tiny chair pod.
And the joy of virtual is you could be doing something for Sesame Street and still sitting in your tiny chair.
Hear that, Sesame Street?
If you're out there.
Call me.
All right, now we're on to a tiny chair classic.
A tiny chair classic.
Tiny chair classic. What's the funniest thing a child's ever said to you?
Oh, there are literally too many. I used to have a little boy who used to call me Nick a Leg rather than Mr. Clegg because he couldn't say Mr. Clegg. So I was then referred to by the whole staff team as Nick a Leg. So that was always quite funny. I also had a support assistant called Miss Flitcroft who another child used to call Miss Lipstick, and we used to laugh at that all the time. Because, so it's usually the things that they say that are just funny or misinterpretations of. But I think one of the great joys and why I've been now in early years for like 35 years is no matter what else is going on in your life, you cannot fail to smile at some point, even if you just spend half an hour in an early years space, because no, the majority of children are just little bundles of joy. They will give you a brutal character assassination. And I mean,
Oh yeah.
I was working in school before the summer holidays, and a little boy said to me, "Are you Nanny Plum?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Are you Nanny Plum's boyfriend?" And I was like, "No."
How did you know?
Where is this conversation going? So we just had a really awkward silence where I could have said, "No, I am not Nanny Plum's boyfriend." They were like, "Oh, you look like Nanny Plum." And I'm like, "Okay, thanks."
It's the hair. It's the hair. It's
Basically,
the
it was the hair. It was the bun, the Nanny Plum bun. But yeah, but that also, I mean, it was a bit of a character assassination, but it made me smile.
I love it. I think it's I know it's a funny point, but I kind of want to segue into a serious point, which is like in those situations when children say something so funny to you or they get the name wrong or something, how do you balance the kind of like laughing along with it with also, because for example, I know my partner's nephew, he's very sensitive. And there's times where he says something and it's funny and you laugh, and then you find out 3 days later that he was really upset about the fact that you laughed at the funny thing he said. I'm just interested in how you think about that kind of challenge about the truth, because they do say funny things, but also sometimes it can ruin their day a little bit that you laughed at them when they were just trying to say your name properly.
They do, and there are two elements of that. With Nick a Leg, we never laughed at Nick a Leg when he said it because he couldn't pronounce Mr. Clegg.
Yeah.
It was a complicated thing for him to say. So we wouldn't have laughed at him, and he wasn't saying it to be funny. So when children are saying things to be funny, you can laugh with them, but we wouldn't laugh at them. I think sometimes when children say things and when you're a parent, your child will do something and it's funny and you all laugh. And then sometimes for some children, the fact that other people have laughed at them causes them anxiety and embarrassment. Sometimes they find it funny at the time, but not again later. I think ideally as an adult, as a professional, you would never laugh at a child who said or did something because of any kind of speech impediment or disability or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if a child does something and you laugh and then they respond negatively to you laughing and it hasn't been done out of a way to kind of hurt or humiliate, it's not the end of the world, because there's also some really good learning that can come out of that for both of you if you are prepared to have that conversation with that child at that level to say, "Oh, I'm really sorry that I made you feel like that," but because no human's life goes along having just a series of perfect moments.
True.
And if it did, you would never learn about all the things to do with empathy and connection and attachment. So when you get it wrong as a parent, as an adult, as an educator, and then you actively put it right, that can really strengthen not only yours but their concept of things like attachment and resilience. So I wouldn't purposefully go out of my way to upset a child, but what I've learned, again through practice and parenting, is that when you get it wrong, the worst thing you can do is think, "Oh, I got it wrong," and then run away and hide or just never speak about it again. It's to go and say, "Look, I got that wrong," in language that's appropriate for the child that you're talking to, and this is how I feel, and I understand that's how you feel. And then by the making of it better and the discussing of how each other felt, you've actually taken learning forward for both of you.
That's
They
amazing.
call it rift and repair, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel like I'm always the person learning from you and the person we're talking to sometimes in these situations. It's good. You're always like, shut Matt, I can't believe you don't already know
I
that, you
would
idiot."
never. There are no stupid questions.
That's good. I'm the Carl Pilkington of the podcast, and that's okay.
What was the last thing that you changed your mind about, either pedagogically or in terms of practice or policy?
Well, it wasn't plastic ivy, I can say that. For certain.
Steadfast on that one.
Yeah. And, well, so I used to be a huge advocate of things like a good old circle time. And using circle time for lots of, opportunities for teaching and learning within a space. And I think what I have, and it's quite a while ago now, but again, research driven around children's engagement, anxiety, what's appropriate in terms of authentic children and child development, I become less and less and less of a fan of circle time. So I think there are amazing opportunities for children to gather together and share. I just don't see the value much in that kind of 20 children all sitting in a circle, all waiting their turn while somebody passes around a tambourine and we all die of boredom. So I think there are always going to be those children that are great pontificators, that will hold the floor, that will speak, and there will always be those children who are very reticent and nervous of that opportunity to publicly have a forum. And I think we have to take all of that into account and create opportunities that exist for children to share, but not in that mass public forum on a daily basis.
Julia? You're doing that thing where you're making the noises again. What's wrong?
I'm bored.
Not this again. We're in the middle of a podcast with Alistair Bryce-Clegg. We take a quick break, and all of a sudden you start making noises like this.
I don't have anything to do.
Well, what do you want me to do about it?
Give me an activity.
I think I have the solution. In family, we have something called the activity library. All you need to do is log into your platform, go to the activity library, and there's hundreds of activities written by educators just like the ones listening to this podcast.
Oh.
You can search by areas of learning, or you can even search by just something you're interested in. Maybe you'll find something you like in there.
Okay, all right. Well, how can I find out more?
Well, as you're already a customer of Family, all you need to do is log into your platform. But if you're not, you can just go to family.co.uk and we'll give you a demo and show you around.
Lovely. All right. Yes.
Excited
good.
now?
Yes, I'm very, very happy.
Okay, well, you haven't got time for it now because we need to get back to the podcast with Alistair. So,
All right.
Let's go. So
do
the
it.
thing we brought you here to talk about today.
That sounded
is-
very demanding, didn't it?
The reason why you're here
You may be wondering why I've gathered you here today.
was to hear about your thoughts on plastic ivy. But now that we've got through that, we wanted to talk about, a great topic, play. We've already talked about it a little bit and you segued into it wonderfully. And of course, it's such an interesting word. It is very loaded in lots of ways. There's lots of debate and discussion about it. But it is the thing, I think, that in many ways unites early years provision. It's the thing that we feel proud separates us from, in some ways, and maybe it shouldn't, from what kids do in school when they're older. Why do you think it is that it is so divisive still as a concept, and that everyone wants their own say on what play is and how it's different?
The concept of what play actually is in the biological sense is really simple. And that if we understand what that is, there's some massive clarity there. And when we talk, Clang, I was chatting to Peter Gray the other day. As you do.
No biggie.
Who was lovely, he's just like the David Attenborough of the early years. He's just the nicest guy and just so lovely to chat to. Anyway, he talks about play and he has a definition of play, which is based on biology. So he's a professor of psychology. So his definition of play is based on biology and psychology. But it basically talks about it being self-chosen and intrinsically motivated. So when we talk about things like play-based learning, which we'll get on to a second, there can't really be play if an adult has chosen the task. So that isn't play. So there is also a difference, and I talk about this in my training, between playful learning and play-based learning. So as an adult, I'm really good at engaging children in playful learning where I bring the play. But if I was talking about play-based learning, I can't say, well, I'm going to do some play-based learning and it's with these resources and this is the outcome, because that just isn't the biological, psychological definition of play. So
Interesting.
If we are thinking about creating play spaces and on play opportunities, it's about giving children open access to a range of resources. And again, you can never take the adult completely out of the picture because you will have curated those resources in some way, shape or form. It could be that you've carefully chosen them, or that they're all you've got in your garage or your stock cupboard, so you get out what you've got. But the real essence of play is that you give children opportunity, time to engage in a space which has a collection of ideally fixed and open-ended resources. You need some fixed purpose resources for children who have a limited experience of life. Remembering that imagination is not something you're born with. Your imagination needs to be fed. So you're born with a potential for an imagination, but it needs constant feeding. And if yours hasn't been fed, you can only draw on what you know. So if I give you a cardboard box with nothing in it, and you've got an amazing backstory of songs and stories and experience, that cardboard box for you can be anything from a house for a hamster through to a rocket ship through to a hat through to a microwave oven. But if you haven't got that, it's a box, or it might at best be a car to put your teddy in. So you need some fixed resources that will say this is a car and cars do this, and this is a house and you know that houses do this, and then a range of interpretable resources. And then that idea that if it's intrinsically motivated and self-chosen, a child will go into a space and they will interpret those resources in a way that's meaningful and enjoyable to them. And so when they get that connection, you then get the raise in well-being. And when you get the raise in well-being, that gives you the focus and the resilience. And then that gives you the longevity of play, which is why we often find with some children in the earlier spaces we create, they will butterfly. Now, sometimes that's because the development of their brain is at the stage where they can only work in their brain for short periods of time. So the very young children often will butterfly naturally because they work on it for that short period of time. The brain goes through that cycle and then they move on. But older children often butterfly because they become very bored or restricted by the play. And it can be loads of stuff, and it can be beautiful stuff, and it can be wrapped in wreaths of plastic ivy, and still they will move on because they're not intrinsically motivated to take part in that play. So when I talk about play, I will talk about the biological, psychological definition of what play is, and then we look at how what we call play or play-based learning, how much of a link or a bridge there is between that and what we present for children. And obviously, playful learning then for me is about adults using their skill and their talent and their playfulness and their understanding of children to shoehorn knowledge into a playful experience. But that isn't play, it's playful learning, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what you don't want is just playful learning experiences back to back. Children need opportunities to biologically, psychologically play. And of course, in English, we've only got one word for it. Other languages have up to 19 different words for what play is and elements of play. So whatever we talk about, when we talk about play, we only use that one word, which is why it also leaves itself open massively to misinterpretation and reinterpretation.
I think that's a big part. We see that in our company, right? Like some words, it's like you realize you're talking to someone and you're like, oh, we're not talking about the same thing at all here. You've just got a totally different definition of that, and I like the idea of bringing it back to the basics of what it actually means psychologically.
Well, something else you said recently that I was reading, I think possibly even in one of the playlist articles, was that if it has a learning objective, if it has a learning objective attached, it's not play. And I thought that was such a lovely, clear definition. But I mean, you've somewhat explained it, but I'd love it if you could just say a little bit more about that.
I think also, and as in all walks of life, what I find, I suppose, distressing is probably not too strong a term, is that lots of early years practitioners very passionate about what we do with early years children because it is a vocation. You cannot work in early years and it should just be something you do because you can't think of what else to do, because you would literally be dead by Friday. You've got to love it because they will suck the life out of you on a daily basis, and you've got to go back and do it again tomorrow. So people get very passionate about it, and I get the passion and I love the passion. But also I think what's sometimes lacking with some of the voices in early years, and again, the voices that we hear a lot because they're loud, is that there is sometimes not a lot of tolerance around the fact that people will interpret early years pedagogy and practice at different ways on their journey as early years educators. So when we talk about play, it's about having a really positive discussion where I talk to you about what my interpretation of play is and how I got there, rather than saying, this is it, and if you don't do this, then you're rubbish. And I think that sometimes does come through. Certainly I hear those voices saying things around that, which makes people reticent then to talk about it because they're frightened they're going to be shot down if their opinion, or to have an open discussion where you say, well, actually, can I just ask you a bit more about that, or can I challenge that?
Yep.
I think with the learning objective thing, when you've got an objective, it's like when you say in your water tray in reception, you've got a lovely little laminated label that if you're really far down a certain route, you'll have written in cursive script that children can't read anyway, but it's the school handwriting policy, which in my opinion is grossly misguided. And actually there is evidence that would show the cursive writing shouldn't happen for children before Key Stage 1, but that's a whole different podcast.
And honestly, even later, I mean, I can't read that rubbish anyway.
If at all. But if you're going to do it, the National Handwriting Association, for example, are clear in their advice that it shouldn't happen before Key Stage 1 for a variety of reasons, not just the physical development of children. And we've all probably seen that X-ray that floats around social media on a regular basis of the hand of a 3-year-old and the hand of a 7-year-old, and you can see that the ligaments aren't all fully formed, the muscles aren't fully formed. So there's all that aspect to it. But there was research done around children in early years who were given cursive writing, and what they found was the prolific mark makers slowed down, and some even stopped because of the then obsession with the beginning of cursive starting on the line.
Interesting.
The more
Very
reticent mark
interesting.
makers, who are often but not always boys, were more resistant to the mark making process. Anyway, so you've got your little laminated objective that says, for example, I wonder. And again, early years practitioners, we often think if we stick I wonder in front of an objective, it's going to make it sound better. The children really don't care if it says I wonder or not, because the truth is none of them are actually wondering, and you probably weren't wondering either. You just did it because somebody told you how to do it. But I wonder how many cups will fill this jug. Like, no 4-year-old is going into a water tray wondering how many cups are going to fill a jug. Literally, nobody cares. So you spend your time with your cups and your jug. You spend your time laminating your label. You then, and again, I was in a setting recently where they had a label on every activity, which had taken the adults ages to do. I mean, they'd been genius and just done it with a dry white marker on a laminated bit of card that was velcroed on to every Tuff Spot. But what they did was said, before we start, Mrs. Smith is just going to go around and explain what we're doing today. And Mrs. Smith, bless her, was like literally knackered by the end because she went around every single activity and said, today, if you come in the water, what you're going to do is think how many cups will fill this jug. Today, if you come to this Tuff Spot, what we're going to do is make a repeated pattern of 2 colours. Today, and of course, I was like, oh, this is, the children were then all fizzy because somebody had said it's time to go. Oh, no, it's not. And then I watched those children. And did anybody do any of the activities? And the answer was no. So again, the discussion we had was around, why have you got the objectives? Because regardless of your school policy, all I want to know is, do they positively impact on the social and emotional well-being of these children and also their progress? And the answer to that was no.
No.
And we hate doing it and we get very stressed. So there is a lot of early years practice, especially school-based, that actually when you say to practitioners, why do you do that? The answer is, I don't know. Or do you want to carry on doing that? And the answer is often no. So there's a little bit of a breakdown in communication between the expectations of leadership and the actual positive practice that should be happening in the space.
I mean, to pull on that thread a bit, and this is something I come back to a lot because I've been an educator in that position where you think, why are we doing that? I don't want to do that. This doesn't seem right. Or can you put some kind of vocabulary on or give some advice to those educators who kind of know that and are like, well, this doesn't work or it doesn't make sense for the children we've got. What can they do to kind of express that to their leadership?
And this is where early years practice, especially in an education system, gets really interesting because it stops just being about early years practice. So again, as somebody who has a voice in the early years sector, we all have to be really careful and really knowledgeable about the people that we are speaking to, which is why, you know, having been a practitioner and then a head teacher for a decade, I spend a lot of my time in settings with adults and children because it's all well and good to say, this is what play is, this is what play should look like, just do this. But then the overriding voice that you get is, well, that's all well and good, but my head says, or my CEO says, or my early years lead says, or parents expect, or my link governor has just asked me to, or my history lead has just said, can they come down and watch me teach a history lesson, or can I put history objectives in my small world area? So we are literally, there's a body of knowledge which is forever growing, and the internet is amazing for this, and research into kind of child development, neurodiversity, how our brains actually work, authentic child development is sitting here. And then there's this history of education that's always been a watered down version of the end point, watered down to a start point. And that's where the clash comes. So one of the biggest things that I talk to practitioners about, especially school-based ones, is trying to have a dialogue where you can speak in terms that senior leaders understand. Because the other big issue is that the foundation stage is separate from Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. But yet in most settings that I work with, it becomes a version of. So I was working somewhere, and again, this is not uncommon. Well, people who listen to this, if they're in schools, will probably be nodding along. But they were doing book scrutiny in their early years. So these adults were saying, from September, we have to have a minimum of 3 books, and each book has to have something in it every week. So we spend a lot of our time sticking worksheets into books and getting children to do worksheets so that the senior leadership can do a book scrutiny. And actually, that doesn't make sense. What you want ideally is for senior leaders to be saying, now then, you will notice that our early years, although belongs to our family, is very different from everywhere else, and it should be different. And the fact your early years is different should be a boasting point.
Yep, that's what you should shout about.
Yeah. Look how different it is. These are where the threads, this is where the foundation is built. So it's again trying to enable practitioners to have that language of attainment through play, which is perfectly doable, but also for senior leaders to expect to observe differently, to record differently, to question differently when they're in early years. And when you get that language and expectation sorted out, then it gets significantly easier. But it's not easy, and it's a constant kind of clashing of two different things.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying this slightly, so please forgive me if I am, but I guess in some ways what I'm hearing from you is that I think you feel like play has a really unique and important moment in the day, and that perhaps by mixing it too much in with like a more formal idea of what learning is, we're actually not allowing it to happen as it should. And I wonder if you're not saying that, of course, please correct me, but I do wonder if you're thinking of, do you want to see those moments almost maybe separated a bit, that an educator or a leader should be looking at the day as moments for free play and moments for maybe some more focused learning? And how do you think about those beats throughout the day?
My fundamental pedagogy is that play is learning, and I think what often happens is play is seen as the thing that happens either before or after learning. And then what you get is not learning through play. You get a either playful learning activity led by an adult, or a torturous objective outcome activity that children are asked to take part in. So it's great to talk about beats in the day, and again in early years, and I know it really annoys some people in Key Stage 2, because somebody told me about it the other day, and when I was in the staff room, they said, when they talk about like the rhythm of their day, I mean, how bloody ridiculous. Sorry about the swear word.
That's fine. I think bloody's allowed, isn't it? That's a light one.
It's a gentle one.
Well, it's a direct quote, so I'm not saying it personally, I'm directly quoting another adult. True. And listen, it's ridiculous. You got a rhythm of a day. Now we know that young children respond very well to some concrete boundary elements.
Agreed.
It's really hard for very young children to have nothing to be able just to hang their hat on. Again, if you even think about the concept of the passage of time. So, trying to teach children about what time is as a concept is really difficult, and we always do clocks way too early and they never quite get it. But also when we're reading them stories about knights and dragons and talking about this is history, the concept of yesterday is difficult, never mind the concept of like what happened 3 centuries ago. But within a course of a day, within that kind of horizontal transition through your day, there should be beats within the rhythm of your day, if we're going to get really annoying for some of our Key Stage 2 colleagues.
It's okay, they're not listening.
Well, they've turned off now, haven't they?
Absolutely, they've not made it this far in the episode. So there will be beats within your day that are, regular, And they can be very different. They don't have to be a morning register circle time. They don't have to be a sit down snack time. They can just be regular features. And then within that, there are opportunities for children to engage in quality play-based learning. So in the way that I would help at set up an early years environment, we would start always with the children. And I'll do this very briefly, but how we would do it is we'd say, if your children are coming in at various points in the year, or if they're coming in September, if you're more school-based, when your children first come in, this is a period of observation and assessment, and you do that through play. You don't do it in the cloakroom with an iPad. You do it by sitting in, watching. And what you would have out there for me is what we would call basic provision, which is not linked to observation, assessment. It's linked to things I know that children like and do. So we've got sand, we've got water, we've got malleable materials, we've got some small world, we've got a home corner, all really familiar stuff. Then you begin the observation and assessment of children, and then you begin to look at your areas of learning and think, right, for this group of children, this actual cohort, where are they strong? Where do they need more support? Where are they? Where are they? And then I get settings to create an environment plan based on assessment. So you then start to say, right, I've got these areas of learning. This is what my kind of graphy mappy in my own head. You don't have to draw it. You can draw it with a piece of paper with a felt tip if you want. This is where my children are. So now what I'm going to do is translate what I know about my children into a space for them to thrive. So I would say, so I was doing this at the beginning of last year, and there's a group of adults that were saying, right, my children need loads more social interaction, they need loads more language development, they need loads more opportunity just to play as a group. They're really bad at that. And so I was like, right, what areas of provision, when you're not in it, really support the things you're talking about? And that's when we came to, they were like, oh, small world's really good for that, construction's really good for that, role play is really good for that. So it's like, great, you're now starting to build an environment based on your assessment. Now tell me about your role play area, what we're going to have in there. And they were like, oh, well, we could have, and that's where it sometimes starts to skew, because they'll say, well, we could have a garden centre, or, well, we've all just been on their holiday, so we could have a travel agent. And then you start starting to say, well,
give us a go on your time machine.
Yeah.
I got the role play area. That all makes perfect sense. Now you've gone over there with travel agent. So what you ultimately want to end up with is an environment plan. So if your senior leader, inspector, local authority, whoever comes and says, tell me about attainment through play, you don't start with your phonics and your maths. You start by saying, well, here's my environment plan based on my assessment. Here's my provision. This is my continuous provision. Here are my enhancements. And this is my direct teaching that sits on the top of it. And the role of the adult is, and then you describe what the role of the adult is. And then suddenly you're able to really pin every aspect of your space onto what your children need, as opposed to being, well, we've got sand, we've got water. Well, we haven't got sand and water. We used to have sand and water, but after the sand and water incident of 2004, we don't have sand and water. We just have sand, and the water's outside under the canopy. So rather than that discussion, we start saying, right, this is what we've got and this is why. And if you come next term, you'll find my space looks either slightly different or drastically different, because I will shift it depending on the needs of my children. I will expand spaces, I might shrink spaces, I might bring in new spaces. So everything should have a reason for being, because every inch of your environment is just as important is the role of the adult within that space. Because most early years children spend most of their time not with an adult in a direct teach. So if you can't nail down that continuous provision, then you're saying most of my children spend most of their time doing something that I've got little or no control over.
You mentioned there about good quality play and learning experiences, and how you were in a setting and they were saying, oh, you know, the children are quite bad at this sort of play or experience. But I wanted to touch a bit about, like, what do we mean by kind of quality play or quality play and learning experiences? How does that look? What does that mean? How might we investigate that in our settings?
And this is the joy of our job, and this is why, like 35 years in, I still learn new things every day. But also I'm in the very privileged position that I now have a role that enables me to talk to thought leaders in our sector. And I also have time in my life, because this is what I do for things like the playlist or things like anything I'm writing for magazines or whatever, that I can sit, and my working day can be to sit and read research or to sit and read. Now, I know your bog standard practitioner has not got time to take a breath. You haven't even got time for cottage cheese and a Rivita, never mind sitting and reading through an academic paper.
It's so true. We talk about this, don't we? About how
talk about it all the
it's kind of a
time,
bit of a
yeah.
blessing that we get to do reading about stuff, talking to people. Like, the educators are too busy doing their jobs.
Exactly, which is kind of where the playlist came from. It's a slightly salacious plug, but the idea of the playlist ultimately was to try and take what's happening now in terms of thought around really good early years practice and really translate it into accessible, short, meaningful information that practitioners can take away and do something with also links to greater research.
Absolutely.
So sometimes what I will do, if I've got a lovely flip chart and a nice felt tip, because I am a teacher of the early 90s, and what you can do everything with a flip chart and a felt tip. I mean, I miss the days of flip charts and felt. It's all too digital now.
That lovely first crisp stroke.
Oh, and even just the smell of the felt tips
smell
gets
of
you
the
through a
markers.
Monday morning.
You can literally hear my team groan when I go for the whiteboard pen.
No,
I love a whiteboard pen. I love a whiteboard. Yeah.
And just anyway, so what we might do is we'll get the team together, depending on what age group they're working with. So your 2-year-olds, your 4-year-olds, whatever. And I get me lovely pen and my flip chart. And I mean, it's always better if there are like Kit Kats or some form of chocolate, especially if it's the end of the day. Because again, loads of staff training happens at the end of the day where you're just knackered. It's the worst time. Chocolate always helps. Anyway, and what we'll do is say, right, describe for me, give me adjectives that describe a typical 4-year-old. And you people are like, playful, loud, emotional, annoying. Annoying comes up quite a lot. Curious.
Me.
You are a typical 4-year-old. Just an average. So we write these down on our sheet, and then you basically say, right, is this what we would call typical? Not even going on yet to the discussion of atypical and what that might look like, but is this typical? Yes. Okay, where does curious, physical, loud, emotional, where do they fit in this timetable? Where do they fit in this space? Where the first thing you say is, come through the door, don't speak to anybody else, hang up your bag, sit down in front of me, look at me, put your body into a slightly uncomfortable position. And then we say bizarre things, which I've said my entire life, like show me good listening, because I've downloaded this laminate and I've stuck it under my whiteboard. And if we look at the psychology and biology of what good listening is where you are so emotionally comfortable and safe and physically
another
comfortable.
question.
And listen. And therefore we say to children, look at me, sit next to somebody you don't want to sit next to. Sit up straight, cross your legs, fold your arms, sit in a hard floor, look, eye contact, listen to what I'm saying. That is not good listening. You are putting a developing brain and a developing body into a position that's not only emotionally uncomfortable, but physically uncomfortable. Or we say bizarre things like, shall we all turn on our listening ears? Shall we? Go on then. That does not make a child listen. So when we're talking about good, in inverted commas, early years spaces, early years practice, ideally, if we were looking at really good listening, and I've done it, I've worked with settings that do this, where an adult actually said to the children, I need to talk to you, can you just get comfortable? And again, I love the terminology.
Good.
But they're also a no shoes setting, so they took their shoes off at the door and they wore slippers or slipper socks in the indoor environment. They also had a climbing wall on the carpet area, which children could, with 2 big ropes that hung out of the wall, so the children could actually swing across the carpet space. Anyway, these children dragged chairs, got cushions. There was one on a bean bag, 2 at the front leaning on their hands like this, 2 leaning up against each other. They got comfortable. The adult talked. Did they wiggle about? Yes, they did. Did they shift? Yes, they did. Did they listen to the adult? Yes, they did. It was brief. The adult talked to them. They moved on. And I just thought at the time, that was good listening. That was really good listening because they felt physically and emotionally safe. But the more I say to other practitioners, why don't you do that? They're like, couldn't do that. What if somebody came in? Our whole remit here is to get them on their carpet spot with their name on it, sitting up straight. So it's changing expectations, but not linked to personal preference. Change expectations linked to science and research. And if you do that, then you can create the best outcomes for
Back
children.
to-
If you just,
Yeah, no, sorry, I've interrupted you when you're in your flow there, Alistair.
I need interrupting, otherwise
I was
I'll-
shocked.
I went too early. I was saying it's the theme of the podcast the last few weeks. Expecting things of children that we don't expect of adults.
I do think that's a fabulous reflection, though. The description of the children you're working with, and then actually, how does that work in this environment?
Yeah.
How does that work in the timetable? I love that.
So good.
That is a fabulous, fabulous thing for people listening to try, I think.
I think that's
And it's dead easy. It's a dead easy thing to do.
love it. Now we're gonna interrupt you. When we
We're going to interrupt.
We're gonna interrupt.
You did.
We already did.
You already did.
Too late. We talked to Alistair a little before we started recording, and he said, "I've listened to the podcast, and I know you interrupt with strange things halfway through, and I'm prepared for it." Well, let's see if he's prepared for our new game, which we're very excited for. Julia, I think this could be it. We've tried so many of these games, and they've all been rubbish.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this is the one that sticks.
It's not the game, it's the contestant.
They've mostly been my ideas. It's the
this is
contestant. You're right. So we're calling this
This is the swimsuit round. So if you could-
Imanagery Friend. And
Managery. I see what you did. It's wordplay.
it's
Mm-hmm.
wordplay. The concept is you're going to open up a setting, right? It's a private setting. You're the business owner. You just get to sit in the background, fix the invoices and stuff.
Yeah.
And you need to hire a manager.
Yeah.
And so we're going to ask you to choose between two managers, and then whichever you choose from that round, you'll then have to compare against the next one.
Okay.
Right? So it's kind of stick or twist. It's
Yes.
blackjack manager style, right?
I've seen it done on dating shows.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Your first choices for the manager of your setting are Baby Shark or Dora the Explorer.
Dora.
Oh, interesting choice. Okay.
Yep. So Dora the Explorer or Fireman Sam.
Dora.
Oh, all right.
Dora.
Sorry, Sam. So Dora the Explorer or Lightning McQueen.
Lightning McQueen.
Oh, Lightning McQueen.
Great. He's got the cheekiness you need. I think it's true. Okay, Lightning McQueen or SpongeBob SquarePants.
I love SpongeBob, but he's too left field.
Yeah.
I have to say Lightning.
I was thinking the same thing. I love SpongeBob, but he's not managing a setting,
no,
is he?
he's, no, he's not.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to tell him you said that. Lightning McQueen or Elmo. Oh, it's so tricky.
Oh, that is...
On management, I'm going to stick Lightning. But I'd have Elmo on the team.
Elmo's he's your superstar, isn't he?
Elmo's
He's
the
your-
curriculum lead.
He's my tickle me practitioner. Although it wouldn't be tickle me because that's really inappropriate safeguarding wise, but you know what I mean.
Wow,
All right, so
Elmo.
Lightning
Straight
McQueen.
to HR for Elmo.
I think this might be a slightly easier one. Lightning McQueen or the very hungry caterpillar.
He's a classic.
Yeah, but he's also dull. He just eats things and gets fat. So Lightning McQueen.
All right. Let's not get personal. Lightning McQueen or any of the Powerpuff Girls. You have your choice of all three.
No, I'm definitely going Powerpuff Girls because they were able to resolve amazing conflicts in super quick time, and they're excellent on teamwork.
Excellent. Oh, he's good. He's good.
All right, so your chosen Powerpuff Girl or Doc McStuffins.
Oh no, Powerpuff Girls all the time.
Girls.
Okay. Powerpuff Girls or Stitch from Lilo and Stitch.
Powerpuff Girls. I'm not a Stitch fan.
Oh,
Oof.
I know, radical.
I know, but also
There's a bit.
that's bringing a lot of chaos to the setting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stitch? Yeah. And finally, last question: Powerpuff Girls or Peppa Pig?
Well, controversial. I'm going to go Powerpuff Girls because, well, Peppa has got quite a controversial rap out there. You know, she's rude. She's
she does a
confrontational.
bit, doesn't she?
There's quite a big Peppa backlash, and I don't know what they've done with the new baby. That's all. Just they should have left Peppa where she was.
I don't know. I think Peppa's a powerful, independent woman, isn't she? She's a
Yeah, but I think
rebel without a cause.
could lead a bit of a toxic culture. I think.
Oh, I don't know.
She is well, but then we'd have to really look at Peppa and discuss whether she is a powerful, independent woman or whether she tips that balance between being really not just powerful but over dominant. And then there's Cousin Chloe, and when Cousin Chloe came to stay, I mean, no, there's too many negative influences on Peppa Pig. Whereas the Powerpuff Girls, there's lots of them. And they are able to come together with teamwork. They've got loads of resources, superpowers. There's nothing they can't do. They never failed in any episode, so they would never fail in terms of the management.
So that's good. Okay.
When Mojo Jojo attacks the setting
Exactly.
for the first time.
We will be sorted.
Well, it's good to know. So I think what we kind of ended up with there is you and the Powerpuff Girls running things. We got Lightning McQueen on as deputy, and then Elmo
Elmo's
curriculum
coming in as
lead.
practitioner. Yeah.
Nice.
Great. It's a great. I'd send my kids there. I'd do it. This is kind of our sort of extra bonus section, I guess. And I feel like it would be a bit remiss to have you on and not ask about the experience on Channel 4 on Old People's Home for 4-year-olds. And I know you've talked a lot about intergenerational care in general. I've got two things I want to ask about this. And the first one is just, that was a while ago, and it did feel like maybe it was starting a bit of a movement. Lots of people were trying things out. They were working with their local retirement homes and seeing if they could make it work. And of course, then we hit the pandemic, and I think that led to a lot of difficulty around the whole concept of having snotty young children with slightly vulnerable older people. I wonder what your thought is on that whole concept of intergenerational care kind of today, and do you think it's something we can maybe revisit as a topic that can really help our children?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. There was a massive movement, and COVID did absolutely kill it for obvious reasons, but it still carries on. So I'm recently working with a nursery that's opened on the same site as an old people's home. Cool. The Salvation Army have a big commitment to having intergenerational sessions within all of their older adult care. So it definitely still goes. There's a publication called United for All Ages, and it's a regular publication that's all about intergenerational work that you can do. So it was the crest of a wave, which I'm sad didn't continue, and it did seem to kind of just fall out of the zeitgeist a little bit, but it certainly goes on. I still get regular contact from people wanting support in setting it up. But also, I mean, the program was great, the outcomes were brilliant, and there's lots and lots of research that shows, I mean, since I probably spoke to you last, I have now also become a grandparent, so I am...
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, it's great. But you're in that kind of, then I see the benefit of just, even for me, but I'm knackered on a Friday, and you think, oh, the grandkids are coming on a Saturday. That's still like, oh, the grandkids are coming on a Saturday. At the moment, I've got some beetroot and carrot top sprouts growing on my windowsill, purely because the 3-year-old is going to be coming along, and we've started growing these carrot tops just to see what grows. And again, I'm watering those on a daily basis to make sure they don't die before he comes back and sees them again. So there's that whole element of you get a little bit of a kind of rebirth going. But when you are setting up an intergenerational program as a setting, that's different. And it's brilliant, and I would recommend that everybody does it, but it's not as easy as just getting a group of children and rocking up to your nearest old people's home or accommodation and saying, hey, let's do some stuff. Because obviously there are major safeguarding elements for both the older adults and the children. But the good thing about it is, if you're thinking about it, is that there is lots of information out there and policy out there and people to talk to. But the benefits for the older adults, physically and mentally, are like quite astronomical. They're not just marginal benefits, they're huge. But what we found in the research that we did, because another good thing about the program was that it was research backed, that the benefits for the children were also huge. I mean, even give you an anecdotal example that came out of the research that we didn't expect. When we were filming the program, we would all have lunch together. So the other adults and all the 3-year-olds would be sitting having their lunch, but you sat up at a table and it was served in the older adults' accommodation. So it was a cloth, and there were knives and forks and china plates. And one of the things the parents said, which they didn't expect, was that their children's eating habits significantly improved, particularly those children who were more reluctant eaters at home. Because when they were with the older adults, they were being served things like, I don't know, broccoli, cabbage, and the adults were spending time not only modelling the eating, but also talking to the children about the eating. So like random things like that massively improved, as well as things like language, social interaction, imagination, storytelling. There's all sorts of stuff where we saw marked improvements over the 3 months that we did it. So if you do it over a year, you're likely to see significant improvements. So it's great.
So cool. And I think it's just, I think the fundamental thing is time, isn't it? I mean, that's the secret of the whole thing, is you have a generation that needs time given to them as much as possible, and you have a generation who has lots of time at that age often. What a perfect marriage. And I love this idea that now you're having grandkids, and you're like, have I still got it?
There's an expectation of that, but it is that joy of just being able to do. And again, if you're an early years practitioner and you're listening, especially if you're about our age, you've got so many things in your kit bag. I mean, there's a little bit of an expectation that, like, what's Grandpa Al going to be doing this week? It's a bit
Grandpa
like...
Al.
Yeah, Grandpa Al.
So cute.
There's a little bit of like, oh, what have you got for us this time? And
I love that.
Bring that down a little bit. But,
it's like that friend who's a doctor, and it's like there's always a rash to be shown to them, and it's like...
my garden, which was because when my boys moved out and it stopped being a football pitch, we kind of invested some money in the garden and made it all kind of nice. It now has a water play station in it at one end,
Okay, yeah, pretty
which
good.
again it's just and again, if you'd said to me one time we should have a water play, I would have been no, and now I'm like, of course. What can I collect? What random objects can I collect from a water play station? So yeah, it's a joy.
I think we're rounding out, aren't we?
We are rounding out pretty shortly.
I have then possibly a final question.
Mm-hmm.
So several years ago, as we alluded to, Matt interviewed you when he was but a boy, and asked,
Excuse me, I was a butter boy.
Butter boy, yeah.
I was but a boy.
but a boy,
Sorry,
yeah.
I thought it was a, yeah.
I literally had to pause and re-listen to that in my head. That's not
Yeah,
what you said either.
Good. No.
I'm trying out speaking like Charles Dickens.
Interesting.
What do you think?
It's working. Yeah.
It works on a podcast, right? He asked you what you would change about the early years. Your answer then was that you wished that people who were making legislation or making policy around the early years knew more about what it was to really be in an early years setting. I would like to know if that is the same now. Do you still feel that, or is there something else you would rather kind of improve about the sector if you could?
Well, again, that's massive. If we even think about things like funding, which has all changed since then, that would be a huge thing that we would change. But fundamentally, the funding's only rubbish because the people who are making policy don't understand
I don't get it.
early years and parenting. So, unfortunately and sadly, given that we've gone through another government change since then, the answer is still yes. And when you've got government leaders, and we're not going to get too political, who are saying things like, and some children in reception can't sit still, and 75% of children will achieve a good level of development, all of these statements, which are ones that then hit the headlines, if you look at the rest of that Bridget Phillipson speech, there is actually some nuggets of really good stuff in there that would support our sector, but they get way lost in these headline statements of... So, yeah, I just wonder why, when you are creating a government, you don't put people in charge of education who really understand. Or, my question is constantly, who is advising? Who is writing that speech? Who are? But then when you look at things like the, writing framework that's just come out, and you look at the people who were advising, albeit unpaid in a voluntary capacity, on the writing framework, they are stakeholders. You have massive companies that benefit from settings buying into phonics and writing schemes. So it's the capitalist world that we live in. But yes, my answer would remain the same. And, I have gone down to London and I've, worked on panels which are advising government policy. But again, not all of that goes directly into changing government policy. Some of it is just an opportunity to listen to the voice of the sector, is what they would call it, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that they do anything with what they hear.
Sad. I think you might have known the answer to that question when you were writing it, to be fair, Julia, but
Maybe.
Sadly we are unfortunately in much the same place. But I totally agree with you. I think it's that thing of like just come and be here for a few days. That would be good. Let's start that. Come and work in this nursery for a few days.
Come work in a
and see how it
setting.
feels, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to very shamelessly use my last question, which I've been using a lot recently for my own gains, which is that I'm going to become a father for the first time in a few months, mid-November. And, you're a dad, now granddad, grandpa
Double
Al.
dad.
What's your Dadvice for me?
Or just have no expectation of parenthood, because whatever you expect it to be, it won't be that. And the other thing I would say is don't beat yourself up too much. There is so much pressure on parents to be perfect parents, and don't go on Instagram and look at parenting accounts because they're all just full of absolute bunkum and rubbish. The biggest thing that you can give your child, and you know this, is just being present. And so it doesn't matter how many gifts you buy them, it doesn't matter how many expensive holidays you take them on, if you are just in the moment with that child, that is more valuable than anything else. So a summer spent playing in the garden is way better than 23,000 million trips where you just get stressed. And so I think it's just about being present and, as I said before, not being afraid to make a mistake. We all, as human beings, being a parent doesn't suddenly make you into an amazing, never gets it wrong human being. You'll get loads wrong, but that's all right. You just need to accept that you've got it wrong and do that reparation bit. And don't aim for perfection. Just aim for reality. And I think, for me as a dad and as a granddad, it's all just about connection. And
Love it.
if you feel like you're close to your children and you feel like you know them because you've spent time with them, honestly, when they get older, that's the thing they talk about, the closeness of the relationship, not the fact that you bought them an iPad when they were 4.
Thank you for that. I'll
love
definitely
that.
carry that with
Yeah.
me. And I was thinking a lot about it when you were talking earlier about the sort of like it's okay to admit when you get things wrong. I think
Absolutely.
so many parents are afraid of that, and I think that's definitely something I'll carry with me as well.
And just play all the time. And even when they get older, still play. It's all about fun.
I love it. Alistair, you've been absolutely amazing. If people listen to
Where
this
can they find him?
and they got to this point and they were like, I want Alistair to come to my setting and tell me how rubbish my plastic ivy is, amongst other things, like doing the wonderful flip chart and all the really good stuff you talked about. You know, where can they get in contact with you? Where can they find you? Where should people go and look?
The simplest place is just to go to abcdoes.com, because that's the website, and from there are links to the playlist, which is the platform with all of the information on, but also there's links to online training, free downloadable resources, and there's a contact me button which comes directly to me. So that's the place to go.
Super duper.
Fantastic.
And we've loved the playlist, haven't we? I've been reading it a little bit here and there and catching articles. I loved your article back in January about gunplay, and there's
Yes,
so
we
many
had
good things.
So much more to talk about.
Thank you so much, Alistair. You've been absolutely wonderful, and we'll catch up again soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Wow.
Oh my gosh,
That
was
was
so
good.
good. I love talking to people who are passionate about what they're talking about. It's
And
so good.
I think one of the cool things with Alistair is you can just tell he's still spending a lot of times in settings, and he's not afraid to sort of gently push people in the right direction. So he really has this context around senior leadership and around how you improve things in the setting, and it's all grounded in psychology. Anyway, great.
Yeah,
Love.
I love it.
What was your main takeaway?
Oh, crumbs. Do you know what? I think it was just him kind of talking so openly about the fact that there are different opinions about play, and we can have this kind of nuanced conversation and without being so prescriptive. And I think we do expect these kind of experts to have these definitive answers of like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
But actually we can be a bit more nuanced about it, and we can have these opinions for ourselves as well. So yeah,
Love that.
I thought
And
that was really
I think that idea of drawing up all the adjectives that you would use to describe children, and then saying, is our setting suitable for
That
this?
was
And,
so
and what about that
powerful.
shout of saying, if you want children to listen to you, say, I've got something to tell you, get comfortable.
Oh, I wanted to ask him about that, so I was so glad when he brought it up anyway, because it makes so much sense, right? Of course you're not going to be listening if you're focusing on how you're sitting, and you're sitting up straight, and you're doing this with your eyes, and you're doing this with your ears and your body, but if you're comfortable physically, of course you're going to be able to focus
For example,
on what's being said.
I'm not listening to you right now because I've been sat in this chair for an hour and I'm incredibly
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
we're very uncomfortable. So I think we should probably wrap up. Where can the people find us?
They can find us on Instagram, on YouTube, on Spotify, of course, probably where you're listening to this. You can see the clips on social media everywhere, and we would love to hear from you, as ever, on tinychairpod@family.co.uk. That's tinychairpod@famly.co.uk. For if you have anything you just want to tell us, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.